in the satsang, it's not like just me talking. You can ask questions at any time. Just raise your hand. You know, if you have a specific question, even if it's off topic, it's okay. You know, because many of you I haven't seen before. So if you have a question, just ask. You know, like one of these questions that you haven't been able to ask anybody. You know, my attitude is like being on the basketball court. If the ball comes comes in your hand, take the shot. You know, don't say, "Oh, I'll get it later." When's later? You know, later's a big maybe. If you take the shot, it's a definite. So with this chanting of Om, and everybody's heard it, you know, that's sort of a universal. You know, Om is universal creativity, universal birth. It's the birth of sanctity in form. That's what Om is. The birth of sanctity in form. You had sanctity in the formless state, but the moment Om, that's the creation sound. And it was birthed out of sanctity. So now it's sanctity in form. See? So it's good to just have an understanding of that. And when you say form, you can open up that door. Someone's at the door. Come on, come in, just push. Push and squeeze. Hey. Just squeeze in. The room will expand, don't worry. This whole yoga thing is to become deeply cognizant, deeply aware of your own sanctity. You know, if you look at all the minds in the room, you know, you have trillions and trillions and trillions of conscious and unconscious self-conceptualizations, how you see yourself and where you see yourself in the world. You know, but if we were actually to take a hard look at what's going on in your heads, we wouldn't find a hard conscious sense of sanctity. You could have a hard conscious sense of, I have a nose on my face and I have two ears. You know, you'll say that's definite. But if I say, well, how about the sanctity? That is your very being. That all of a sudden becomes a very esoteric question. You know, it becomes a very existential question, you know, philosophical question, but not like, oh, I have a nose on my face. So that's the purpose of all this yoga, is so that the reality of your sanctity becomes as real as the nose on your face, not just a conceptualization or a hopeful maybe. You know, so you have some very definite ideas of who you are. This is my name. This is my history. This is my race. This is my trade. You know, my profession. But if I say sanctity, you'll say, well, the religions say that it's there, but I haven't seen it so much, so yet. It's still a maybe. You know, your own, this whole process of yoga is if you were to hold your nose and dunk yourself under the water. And now 30 seconds gone by, a minute's gone by, 2 minutes have gone by, 5 minutes have gone by. Can you imagine how much you want to take a breath? The amount of energy you would fight to take a breath after that 4 minutes, after that 5 minutes. The same intensity that you want to take that breath is also the same intensity that you should have in realizing that, yes, I am a sanctified being. Yes, there is spirituality. Yes, I was birthed out of divinity. The same fight that you would have to take that breath is the same determination, a strident statement of yes, you know, there is holiness innate within me. That is the seed of my being. So, can you imagine if you thought that the seed of your being is divine, and you had the same ferocity and strength as if you were trying to take that breath, how your self-conceptualization would change? You know, right now, I'm a boy, so that's strong. I'm a girl, that's strong. I'm of this race, that's strong. You know, those are very, very strong. But the very genesis of your being, not so much. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's why the ancient sages said, know thyself. See? So you know thy surface, but you don't know thyself. That's a problem. So this is just introductory notes. So hence the need for yoga, which is the science of self-knowledge. Self with a small s and a big S. You know, the big S is your solar self, meaning your seed self.
May I ask a question?
You certainly can.
I think what you're saying is very important, and theoretically I agree with it.
Yeah.
And I know that the habits of maybe all of us are most opposite.
Yeah, it's problematic.
Yeah. And that's so what you're saying is extremely important for that reason.
Yeah.
But I actually had my question is actually sort of a minor question.
Good.
Compared to that. I'm agreeing with you I
Okay.
think I understand, at least theoretically.
Sure.
But the minor part is, what about things that are not people, like not me? Like I am, divine, and I need to be able to feel that and understand that. But what about, I have the sort of desire to understand, and I have believed that it's true, that everything, not just me, is sacred.
Absolutely.
All of existence.
Absolutely. That goes to my very first opening statements regarding Om. Om is the birth of sanctified form, meaning everything.
Okay.
Everything is born out of Om, and Om is that first manifest expression in form of divinity. Everything is sanctified.
Would you say that everything is equally sacred? My being and a teacup?
Yes.
Okay. That makes me very happy that you say that.
At the end of
my
the day,
ideology is the same as yours.
yeah. At the end of the day, yes.
Okay.
That's sort of somewhat of a sophisticated question that you're asking there.
But the vitally important thing is to know that you're not only am I, especially for many people, adequacy.
Yeah.
Many people have the habit of thinking they're not adequate in one way or another.
Yeah.
Quite the contrary. We're all vastly on the other direction from that, which is sacred,
That's true.
beyond adequate.
Oh,
And that's a hard habit to
Absolutely.
overcome,
Yeah.
the habit of thinking that you're not enough, for some people in particular.
yeah. Are you a psychologist? Because you're
No,
asking very
no.
psychologically oriented questions.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, yeah, psychologists or psychiatrists, whatever,
Yeah.
therapists deal with this problem.
Yeah.
People a lot. It's true.
Yeah. This whole thing of yoga science is sort of a deep dive into what you elementally are, not what you've been taught. So the sages of every tradition talk about the process of revelation. And in that process of revelation, you're incrementally getting greater and greater or deeper and deeper insight into what you are. See? Society sort of gives you a placing of who you are. Deep yoga gives you a placement of what you are. It's a different place to stand. So I can say, I'm Haricharan, this is my history. That's one thing. But it's only in deep revelation do I realize what I am. See? if I look at myself as Haricharan Das with a particular history, then I act in the world based on my own history. Now, if I look at myself as what I am, my action in the world will be totally, totally different. Totally, totally different. Like, did Jesus stop at being a carpenter? Or did he become a universal healing for humanity? The same thing with Buddha or Krishna or any of the great masters or saints. What they were was what was important, not who they were, what they were. You know, what they were manifesting their essential self in action. You know. Okay, we'll sit and.
Sorry, can I just
Certainly.
add what you stated there?
Certainly.
And that
This
is
is Kabira, a longtime disciple of Sankhya Shalva Master.
First of all, before I do that, let me give you're really blessed to have Haricharan to share. He's a direct disciple of Sankeshwara Maharaj. And not only that, he was in the ashram, and he was personally involved with serving Gurji and Mataji. So when I first met him, he pulled me aside, and I'm really thankful. This is because he saw I was, sincere. Just pulled me aside. Here's a list of books. You know? And so he's been really we've been friends throughout the years. Now, just to tie in with Haricharan and what he says, is Shankaracharya, which is one of the great sages throughout Indian history, says if you have these three things, you have the grace of God. One is human birth. It takes 8.4 million species to get to the level of human birth. Why? Because only the human being can become one in that state of moksha, nirvana, that state of oneness with spirit. Two is the desire for liberation. And three is to have a sadguru, someone that's already in tune with God. When you have those three things, you have the grace. So everything is a manifestation of God, but only the human being, so to speak, a teacup can become one with God. Even with Lord Buddha, I was looking at him last night on the documentary. It says in his previous lives where he was an insect, he was
He went
a
through
deer.
every form of manifestation.
Yeah. So you have the animal, you got the mineral kingdom, but the highest level is being a human being, because only a human being, a monkey, for example, is a manifestation, but it cannot become one with the ultimate reality. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. There are some exceptions, but essentially that's correct. And the exceptions mean a sadguru has to be involved to make.
No,
to
I
make
was
a leap.
fortunate. We both have the same gurus, so,
Yeah.
and
No.
I have the privilege, like as Haricharan, he pulled me aside. So likewise, I'm really beholding to Hari. He's been a dear friend throughout the years.
Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah, so what Kabir is saying is that you have to go through this big, long evolutionary arc where you have to have the experience of every form of manifestation. And the highest manifestation is to get into a human body, and then from a human body you can reach full completion. So you have this evolutionary arc that we all go through, and we travel through, from the minerals to the plants, to the animals, to the human condition, and then to the various gradations of sacred, and then to the ultimate reality. It's a long walk, it's a long haul. That's why people who, like everyone here, all of us, we don't realize how fortunate we are to be even interested in the topic of spirituality, or the topic of what is God. Just to get that far is a huge evolutionary walk. You've traveled, billions and billions and billions of births to get to that point where you have the evolutionary facility to take a very deep leap into the nature of reality. Like a dog and a cat or a stone is not thinking about the nature of reality. They're not. But a human can. That's what makes the human condition special, is to be able to speculate about a reality that is beyond the obvious. See? A dog and a cat and a cow look at the obvious, and that's their reality. But a human being can speculate beyond the obvious. See? He can look up at the stars and say, what does that mean? But a dog doesn't ask, what does that mean? But a human does. You know, even an elementary human, a savage human, even looks up and says, what does it mean? You know, has some sense of speculation. So the fact that we can speculate beyond the obvious makes us special evolutionarily, makes us special. And then this whole specialness over time leads us to be a type of divine scientist, where basically everything that comes into your hands, you're starting to ask, what does it mean? You know, what does it mean? Where does it come from? What is its place in existence? You know, so we have a lot of you people have studied science, you know, periodic table. You know, we have all the elements. So we say, what is the place of this element? You know, only a human being will ask that question. You know, and then we look at even the elements of existence, asking what does it mean, and then we look at human beings and ask what does it mean, and then we look at our lives and ask what does it mean. See, this is very big, deep diving to constantly ask what does it mean. It makes you special, you know, and you've evolved to the point to be able to ask what does it mean, you know, and you know, so the obvious is okay, there's an earth. But what's not so obvious, they ask the question, well, is there a heaven? Is there something beyond earth? You know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot. The very fact to make that speculation this type of a divine science leads you into finding methods of inquiry. The great yogis of all the traditions, particularly India, but really all the traditions, simply developed sciences of deep inquiry to find out what is truth, you know, what is nature, what is self. So, you know, even what is happiness? You know, to say what is happiness? That's a profoundly philosophical question. You know, what is happiness? So, you know, in the beginning, as let's say elementary human beings, well, happiness is, you know, spicy popcorn and, you know, ice cream. You know. Then later on, oh, spicy is when my girlfriend loves me. You know, happiness is when my girlfriend loves me, my boyfriend loves me. But what we find out in that process is it's not stable. That's the problem. The ice cream, momentary pleasure gone. Popcorn, momentary pleasure gone. Girlfriend loving you, momentary pleasure gone. You know, gone for whatever reason. Gone because she's gone someplace else. Gone because she's left the body, but gone. So, as human beings, we get exhausted and a sense of dissatisfaction because things are constantly in transition. The moment you grabbed onto it and thought, yes, I'm standing on stable ground, it's gone. You know? And this actually sort of works towards the topic that we're talking about today, with yoga time transition, finding or maintaining a golden thread. as human beings, we have a divine angst. And that angst is caused by a lack of stability. So if you look at your life, and all of yoga is one way or the other, it's about constant inquiry, is to find, try to find any principle in your life that you actually concentrated on that was stable. Can you find can you imagine how much psychic energy you've generated in your life, and then how much have you generated that energy onto any stable principle? Family, ups and downs. Girlfriend, boyfriends, ups and downs. Career, ups and downs. Health, ups and downs. Philosophy, maybe yes, maybe no. So can you imagine how much psychic energy you've put on things that are unstable? So how can you be happy? How can you find any stableness when you've put 99% of your energy on the thinking about things that are inherently stable? You bought the brand new car, breaks down 6 months later. You know, boyfriend comes and goes. House breaks down, burns up, comes and goes. Thieves come. None of it's stable. Hence, if you're always concerned based on a lack of stability, how happy can you be? What you have is moments of happiness or moments of pleasure, but there's no stable happiness. That's a massive existential problem if there's no stable happiness. Even if let's say you have the best marriage, 25 years go by, he's great, she's great. 30 years go by, he's great, she's great. Then boom, someone passes away. Great sorrow. So you were lucky, you had a good run, but was it stable? And then as 20 years comes, and 26 years come, and 30 years come, then you start looking at the clock saying, uh-oh. You start spending a lot of that time, even though you're in a great relationship, worried that the clock is ticking and they're going to go. Either I'm going to go or she's going to go. So there's a hidden fear. Even when you get the best of what you want, there's always the hidden existential understanding that it can go in a moment. For whatever reason. Heart attack, car crash, boom, it's gone. So this puts us in an existential dilemma. We're always quietly, hiddenly, in some form of fear, state of fear, all the time. Because whatever we love is in flux. If my wife goes out tonight and drives her car, do I know if she's coming back? I don't know. Is it existentially in the back of my mind? Absolutely. Maybe not so much consciously, but existentially in the back of my mind? Yeah. Because I drive the roads also and know that everybody doesn't come home. Okay? So, hiddenly, we have to, in order to fix something, you have to know the problem. So you have to take a very deep look at how stable am I really? We're all in this constant state of flux. The yoga scientists to try to bring us to some kind of stability so that we can have a baseline where we can psychically rest and psychically see and be relieved of this existential fear of things leaving all the time, of losing what we love. See? We all have that. That is part of the human experience. Fortunately for us, part of the human experience lies beyond our basic psychological conception of how things appear. If we can learn to look deeply at our lives and ask the question, where have I experienced, or where have I seen some stability in life? See, so that becomes a big psychological question and a big psychological quest, because you can tell me thousands of things that you concentrated on that have come and gone, that always are in a state of flux. But no one's asked you the question about reviewing your life and saying, when I was a child, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult, when I was a full adult, where did I see something in life that was absolutely stable, that was always the same? From childhood to this very breath, something stable. See, the thing about it is it's only the yogis that ask you and press you to ask those questions of yourself and do that evaluation. See? So if I asked you what's come and gone, you can tell me 10,000 things. But if I ask you what has been consistently stable from childhood to this very breath, then you have to lean back and think. You're back on your heels now, because nobody ever asked you that question. If nobody asked you that question, you didn't do the examination. It just didn't come to mind. So it's when you start to do the examination, at that point, you can start to find some new reference points. Right now, all of your reference points are very volatile, very unstable. Every reference point you got it's still an ultimate maybe. So in this yoga process, you have to start to say, what are my reference points that are stable? I don't expect you to answer this right now, because it's a very tough question. It's something that this is really deep thinking that you have to say. What experiences from childhood to this very breath has been stable? It's very, very difficult. Well, in this case, I'll be a little bit self-reflective, and you'll have a little insight on this guy, this yogi. Because I did think about those things when I was a child. And I think about it now, from childhood to 60 years old. There has been from childhood to now, there's been a constant hidden reflection. I don't know why. This is probably karmic. I must have been thinking about it some other birth. But you can stretch your legs. It's okay. You okay?
Cramping my.
All right. But each of you have to do your own reflection. But because this has sort of been sprung on you and you haven't had time to think about it, I'll talk a little bit about my reflection. For me personally, and even to this very day, I think about these things all the time. Same thing from childhood. When I was a kid, I'm talking like elementary school, so maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, like that. I used to look at the clouds and look at space, and from that time on, it's been like a constant companion of the concept of spacious stillness. This sounds very abstract. It might even sound a little nutty, but I would look at the sky and think and be really impressed of its spaciousness and absolute stillness. And I would just think about it, it was sort of like having I don't know how you put it. It's sort of like I don't know how you'd say that. It's sort of like a conceptual angel ghost. I don't know, but it was like a presence. It was like a presence where I would just look and say, no matter from day to day, year to year, month to month, phase to phase, that was always the same. I'd look in a very sort of existential way and say, there's always this grand space, and it's absolutely still. So that sort of became like a type of psychic companion for me. It was like a companion. It was something that was always the same. Everything else, school, people behaving this way, that way, family up and down, this and that, life, body, everything changing. But I'd open my eyes and say, it caught my attention because it was unique. It was always the same. It may be sort of strangely conceptual, but I was impressed that it was still and it was open, vastly spacious. And it was always the same. No matter 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I'd look at it and say, there it is. Everything else is like a roaring train in constant movement. But that was always there. So in some ways, I acquired some type of a psychic stability because I always sort of paired up with it. That it was like a type of companion. Everything else was up and down, constantly changing. But that was something that was constantly present and constantly the same. And that actually impressed me. That everything else is, this tumbling flux. But and if you concentrated on that stillness and that spaciousness, it was actually extremely relaxing. It was a type of a psychic sanctuary. And it's just a matter of having concentrated on it, that all of a sudden I could lean back and sort of, it's like being with a friend that you feel very good with, So it's a little bit, those are all those types of concepts are actually concepts that are very deep in the world of meditation. So that was one thing that from childhood persistently, and even today, it persistently impresses me. It's like a companion. And the other thing that I observed was the concept of beauty. That the concept of beauty then and the concept of beauty now, for me, is absolutely the same. That I found that in life, beauty was always present. It was just always present, no matter where I looked. I remember one time, maybe it's 19 years old or something, maybe younger. But anyway, like from 17 to 19, somewhere in there, I was walking through an area that had a lot of construction going on. And so the earth was all tore up, and there's rebar, and there's concrete rock all broken up. But as I'm walking through this field that's really sort of a disaster zone, here are these flowers popping up. I was very impressed by that. You look across this field and it's basically disaster. It's rubble. But amidst that rubble, here are these little flowers popping up. So even in something that would seem obviously a disaster, there it is again. This sort of spontaneous beauty manifesting. Again, it impressed me. And that concept of beauty has always been with me from childhood to today. So even if I'm in like a place that's extremely boring, at least quote, quote, boring, I start to look around and say, where are you hiding? Because I know, no matter what, there's something beautiful there. And it's just a question of me looking deeply to see where it's hiding. So if you put me in a brick room, eventually, I'd start to say, where are you? And I'd start to look, and it'll be there. It's not whether it's there or not. It's whether I can see it or not. See, so I would always look, and as I calm down and look deeply, there it would be. So like let's say you're thrown into a cell, some dark, dingy, crummy cell. Painted some drab color. At first you're thinking, oh my God, this is miserable. Here we are. This is, I'm sitting in a cell. I'm type of hell. But then that creative thought, well, where is that beauty? I know it's there somewhere. And then you start looking and looking and looking. And as you calm down and your mind starts to expand to get beyond the obvious, then okay, you say, oh, well, there's all these interesting patterns, in the brick. And then there's all these different little grooves. And then you start to say, okay, well, let me see the structure of the pits that are in the... All of a sudden, you start to see all this hidden creativity that's beyond the obvious. We didn't see it because we didn't look for it. But because from childhood, I knew it was always there. It was just a question of it being hidden. I had to look for it sometimes. Sometimes it's very obvious. You go to Yosemite, boom. It's just in full explosion. But, you throw yourself in a cell, it's also there. It's just a question of you looking for it. You saying it's like knowing your shadow is there. You know it's there. You just got to turn around and look for it. And the same thing with this concept of beauty. From childhood, it was always present. Even in my belly, I just knew it was present. So it was just a matter of me looking for it. So it made that the mind had to become creative to look for it. And to me, beauty and divinity, it's part of the same breath. You just can't separate it. It's just part of the same breath of what God is doing. So in any condition, in any element, God via beauty was present. See? And then as I grew older, that spacious stillness was also part of the breath of God. So what happened for me personally is just over time is that God was always present. And it originally came through those, and still even today, but it's just grown. That sense of awareness of God, through that spacious stillness and through that, sense of beauty in existence, gave me the constant sense of a divinity. And then as you learn the practice of prayer, the practice of mantra, practice of meditation, and you can learn to become very, very psychically quiet. The reason you want to become psychically quiet is because your mind is built on creating. 24/7, even in the dream condition, your mind is creating its own reality. And it's referencing this against that. But in general, when the mind is functioning, it's referencing based on things that are unstable. So there's no satisfaction in the unstable. But over time, in the process of meditation, the mind slowly stops the creating process. And when the mind can stop creating, when your mind is creating, you're seeing your creation, your interpretation of reality. That's your creation, based on your body of knowledge. But when you can stop the process of creation in your own mind, which means entering into a greater sense of silence, a greater sense of stillness, then you start to see the creation. Not your creation, the creation. See? So there's a big difference between your interpretation and what's really going on. See? And when you start to see what's really going on, that's what the saints are talking about, revelation. All of these successive revelations, one after the other, start to happen. And as these revelations happen, your sense of reality radically changes. Your sense of common life as opposed to sanctified life radically changes. Because as you can come into a sense of profound psychic stillness, then you start to come to sort of the ground of existence, of which everything has sprung from. See? All the human beings are like blades of grass springing from this ground of sanctity. So all of a sudden you start to realize everything I see when my eyes are open are nurtured from what I experience when my eyes are closed. See? In that meditational science. So all of a sudden you realize that there's this profound ground of sanctity of which existence springs from. So your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole psyche start to change. Your whole sense of action starts to change. Because you've come to a point where you're starting to see the substratum of life. You're starting to see the bed of existence of which everything has sprung from. So you start to realize that everything is sprung from this infinite pool of sacredness. But as they're springing from that ground, they're all just in different levels of self-knowledge. See? But they're all feeding on the same sort of nectar, amrita. They're all sacred nectar. They're all feeding on the same substance, but they're at different levels of self-knowledge. Just like you have a baby at 2 months old, and the baby at 5 years old, and the baby at 15 years old. Different levels of self-awareness. But they all came out of the same thing. Now, if we're not doing any kind of deep meditation, deep prayer, deep reflection, you don't have that revelation that it's all sprung out of the same thing. You're just seeing infinite, manifestations of creativity, but you're seeing them as independent actors. You're seeing them all as individualized substances, as opposed to in the meditational situation, you start to see that they're all feeding from the same sea. So they're fundamentally all the same stuff, just at different levels of creative manifestation. So it completely changes your perspective when you open your eyes to what you're seeing. So that's why all the yogis, all the saints will constantly say, "May all be well." They start to have a sense of a universal beneficence. It's because they are constantly in tune with the substratum of which every creative act is functioning from. So every human being is a creative act. Every plant is a creative act. Every mineral is a creative act. They're just at different levels of self-knowledge, of self-expression. See? They're all evolving. They're all changing. See, they're all moving along their own evolutionary arc. But as a human being, we just see them as just sort of creative items that we don't fully understand. As where the yogi sees that they're all taking birth from the same sea. And they're simply creative expressions at different levels of expression, different levels of involvement. And the yogi can say, there's this long arc that they're taking, and there is a condition that they'll resolve into. See? So when you realize they're all in an arc, they're all coming from one sacred creative sea, and they're going to evolve and resolve in one divine creative condition. Who do you hate? Who don't you want to help? And also you realize that you're also coming from that same sea, going to that same resolution. So who's not your brother? Who's not your sister? Who don't you want to help? See, all of a sudden you realize that you're just part of the same creative body in manifestation. So this type of universal beneficence, universal care, universal service, it just arises in you through experience that you've actually come out of the same creative body, and that you're just at different levels of expression. You realize you're all family, one way or the other. You're all family, So you just want to assist everybody else. It's just that you start to realize that you're having this experience of self-awareness, and they have the potential, but they haven't had that experience because they haven't applied the science yet. When they apply the science and actually start to see their true face, they'll be just like you in terms of wanting to universally help. Yes.
How does this story about reality include evildoers and evil doing, those with evil intent, as human beings who are evolved from lower life forms?
Yeah. Good question again. Evil is based in ignorance. The greater the ignorance, the greater the evil. So evil is profound lack of self-knowledge, a profound lack of self-knowledge. So the more I can see that you're different than me, the more that I can say that you're other, the more evil is the potential of evil is more potential there. But the more I see that what made you and what made me and our evolutionary manifestation and movement are the same, all of a sudden, you're closer than a brother traveling on the same road.
It's curious from the point of view of human beings evolving from lower creatures then, that it's possible to make it to this human form that has this potential for seeking for meaning and seeing beauty, to get there and still have this level of ignorance. But that's how it is, because evil does exist.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can I just kind of tie into that? If this was a play, God's Leela, or if you go to a movie and if everybody's good, that'd be a very boring movie, wouldn't it?
I prefer it vastly.
So likewise, it's like you may be crying, oh boy, that was a great movie, but it's just a play. Likewise, the more evil the bad guy is, the gooder the good guy is, so to speak, because of the duality. In the world of duality, Dr. Albert Einstein, you have everything is comparative in relation to everything else. So how do you know bad, or how do you know you're happy unless you've been unhappy? So you want to get beyond that duality into the ultimate. And so the evil is basically part of the play to show the good that's there. And then of course with the law of karma, it's going to come back and kick him anyway. So ultimately the learning process is if you do evil, then it's going to come around and karma and get you. So eventually you're going to find out that an evil person is going to ultimately learn a lesson and say, gee, this is not a good thing to do. And then of course one aspect it could be, well, gee, maybe God set this up as a play, so to speak. And so now there's a duality of game of hide and go seek to find God. Now Haricharan, obviously in previous life he come in with that aspect of that ultimate space. A very high soul, obviously, to have that level of consciousness at such a young age. He's a high yogi for sure. Previous lives, to come in with those kind of questions, obviously he's been really a high yogi. And he is a high yogi, so to speak.
I've had the blessing of Guruji. I've had that good fortune. Many births with him. Yeah. Also, what you're saying is interesting, semi-valid. We have to understand our limitations. When we think, we're thinking purely from a human perspective. And we have a lot of unconscious premises that, like the average human being, let's say roughly they live 100 years. So we're always thinking in reference of 100 years, which is, we usually use our lifetime as a reference point. But your reference point and what you see as evil or tyranny is based on a very tiny, finite reference point. So let's say even the worst of things, Hitler and the Stalins and the Pol Pots and all these people who have done infinitely bad things. In reference to eons of existence, what is that moment of evil, the quote quote evil? See? If your existence is eons, infinite, unlimited, then the momentary evil of a life, what is that in terms of reference? See? It's less than a splinter. But as a human being, we think of 100 years as everything. As everything. So that instant of profound ignorance becomes everything. But in reference to infinity, it's less than a moment. See? So part of the problem is our reference points. And this is very clearly discussed in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna makes the statement, and it's taken place on a battlefield where there's dharma, which is righteousness, and adharma, which is that which wants to suppress righteousness, or battling. And Krishna says to Arjuna, those who think that anyone has died here is ignorant. See? Because you have to look at your reference points. It was even in this calamitous battle, calamitous vying of forces, in the span of infinity, it was just a moment. And what was lost were bodies, which are corruptible, not souls, which are infinite. See? And basically, we all reach the same place, it's just at different times. And even time is not really, really real. Time is maybe, if you take the word now and then, in between that is time. In between the word now and then is time. But the soul is now, forever. There is no now and then. In the Gita they say the soul cannot be drowned, it cannot be dried by air, it cannot be burnt by fire. It's a immortal consciousness that is cannot be violated in any way. See? So all of the violations that happen to us as limited conscious human beings are just a moment in a dream. When we wake up, we were never violated. It's like a bad dream. See? Did it really do anything? Did it really substantially damage you? No. And we realized it was a bad dream. So even very bad war, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, all these, go back further, infinite wars. This whole manifestation is a relative reality. It's not an absolute reality. So we look at evil and we think we have the notion that it's a stable reality. It's not. It's an evil within a dream body. So ultimately, it's insubstantial. Now, as embodied beings, thinking that this is the absolute reality, we have the conceptualization that it is real, it is potent, and that it has true effect. But when you go into a deeper reality, a deeper self-awareness, your whole parameters of reality change. See? And that all of a sudden, as you rise up, and start to realize that you're an infinite sanctified reality, then the stings on the mortal body, it becomes insubstantial. So if you if you look at the great sages and saints and masters in our historic reference, you say that you realize that none of them were afraid of death. You know, none of them were afraid of death at all. They just looked at it as part of the events of the human experience. You know, but they were, their psyche was based on a deeper reality. So Jesus knows he's going to be crucified. You know, he knows that his time is up. Why didn't he get on the fastest camel out of town? Because he realized even with his flesh, he wanted to bring a teaching, you know, of hope, of forgiveness, of the immortal spirit over flesh. See? There was a teaching that he simply used his body for, and used the world process for, to bring out a solar teaching that you are more than flesh, that you are an immortal soul, that there is an infinite existence beyond this. So he used it as part of the divine play, the divine Leela, to help us to realize that even something as horrid as a crucifixion, he could turn it around and made it a benediction. And he said, I'll use this body as a Lamb of God. See, as a sacrificial thing. So that a message of hope, a message of sanctity beyond the mortal coils, he demonstrated it so that all humanity could see. So, but he was based in that Christ consciousness, that solar reality, that cosmic reality, which allowed him to use his entire human experience as a teaching, see, and as a fundamental hope, and later on as a fundamental realization that we're more than just the flesh. See? So he wasn't thinking in 100-year terms, you know, which is what we all think of. As human beings, we think of roughly 100 years. And we look at everything in reference to that, you know. How important is it in reference to 100 years? But he's looking at eternity. See? So this is the thing. The process of yoga, the word yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yog. It means to bind together, to join together. So you're joining the finite with the infinite. See? The profane, you know, with the sublime, you know, with the sacred. See? It's a bridge. This whole process of yoga is a bridge. As human beings, we think of things in terms of time. You know, now and then. Time is always between now and then. See? Like one time I asked my master, Sadhguru Sankeshavadas, he had full knowledge of all the past, the moment, and the future. I mean, it was astounding. He could tell you, I could take you into my master's room, and we'd sit down, and he'd look at you for a few seconds, close his eyes like this, and in a few seconds, he'd open his eyes. And from that moment on, he knew everything you've ever done, whether it's large, small. He could say when you were 3 years old, you were living in such and such a place, and this is what you had, this is what you were dressed in on your 3rd birthday, and this is how you felt about your mother, and this is what your mother, everything. You know, and this was normal. This is what I lived with. Your portfolio was completely open, you know, and he could go back birth after birth after birth of what you were doing, who you were, what you said. He could tell you what you were having for breakfast, you know, 6 months from now, where you'd be, what you'd order. You know, it was really amazing. In the beginning, it's like you're like totally shocked, but after a while, it became normal. I mean, literally, your entire transit through existence was open to him, and all the karmas and all the balancing of the karmas, you know, were just present present to him. This is what you start to, when you're around a master. Your whole sense of what's possible completely destroyed. Completely destroyed. You know, because you're living with them and you're seeing things that they take for granted just as normal are like totally mind-blowing for us. So one time I asked him about it. You know, I said, Guruji, how is it possible that you so easily know past, present, and future? And he laughed for a second. He said, well, Hari, you think in a very linear way. You think of 1, 2, 3, 4. In a linear way. Things are in order. And you're looking at it along this line. But he said, we don't look at things that way. We look at it from this point of view. You look at it from this point of view. So we can see past, present, and future in a moment. It's all a moment. That's where you look at it as past, present, and future. 1, 2, 3. Along this line. And he said, we don't look at it that way. You know, so that was his explanation. He's looking down on the whole manifestation as we're looking at it in a process. He's looking at it in a moment. So completely different psychic reality. You know, but there's many things like that when you live with these saints and live with these masters that are just normal for them, and for us, utterly mind-blowingly extraordinary. You know, but for them it's totally normal, just part of life. You know.
Just kind of tie in with that, then, Rod.
Yeah.
One of the problems that we have, being human, is our mind. And what the yogis are doing, they're going beyond time, space, and causation. Everything we know has a beginning and a middle and an end. But in reality, there is no beginning, no middle, no end. So one of the things that happens is they're sharing this ultimate reality with us, so to speak. And of course, if you have the grace of sitting at the feet of a master, then you're getting this whole thing. So one of the things we read Ramana Maharishi says the mind is the thing that keeps us away from God. The closest thing we are to God is when we're in deep sleep, the yogis say. That's the closest thing to samadhi. But if you think about it, this looks real. Unreal means that's temporary, which is what Hari's talking about. Everything is changing, is moving. The real means that which is eternal, does not change, not moving. Yeah. But everything we see has a beginning, a middle, and end. So when you're in deep sleep, the mind is not there. But right now the mind is there, and they say, but then when we go to sleep and we dream, while we're dreaming, the dream is real. Until we wake up, so, I slept really great last night, I had this dream. But then when you wake up, you're in another realm, and at the whatever state the mind is in, that's real. But with the yogis, they're like, here, and this is a dream. So, I mean, to be in the
I can see Kabira's been studying.
of a yogi.
That's good, Kabira. That's correct.
That's our problem, is we're in time, space, and causation, and then they're dealing with beyond. So
it's all a moment.
So how can the mind even grasp that which is beyond the mind? It's and then
Do you have a literature that can be studied, like Kabira maybe?
Oh, sure.
He gave me a list when I got started.
That's like 25 years ago or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Longer than that, probably 30 years ago.
Is it something more closer to your particular lineage, the literature, or is it like the Bhagavad Gita, and, the classics and things like that?
Yeah, Bhagavad Gita is essential. Is an essential study. And really, you read the Gita all of your life, and you should read multiple copies of the Gita, multiple commentaries, because the truth is no one commentary can hold it all. Really, there's infinite wisdom in the Gita, and I can recommend multiple commentaries because they're not all equivalently equal.
Have you or your master had much writing that's published?
my master has some writing that's published. Yeah, he has several books out. Scriptural study is important because scriptural study gives you sort of the parameters of how to go along the yogic path, and scripture is useful because it sort of keeps you on the road. But it's prayer, mantra, meditation that give you revelation. One is sort of functional theory, and the other is intimate personal revelation. So both are important. One sort of gives you the guide rules, but ultimately you have to become still. Ultimately, you have to sort of become reawakened to your sanctity. So, like, why are you practicing mantra over and over and over? Mantra, let's say, is sacred utterance. That sacred utterance is simply resurrecting what you are. It's sort of filling the mind matter with the presence of what you really are. As we've been thinking and feeling and doing and filling sort of the mind stream of our own unenlightened creation. So our head is full of our own stuff. But when you practice mantra over and over and over, you're sort of rekindling the essential stuff of your beingness. See? So that it manifests, it grows, you become open to yourself. The mantra makes everything like itself. See? So it burns up all the mind stuff that you've created, so that you can start to have greater and greater experiences of what you essentially are. And then you have the process of prayer, which is a type of first psychological and then a psycho-spiritual experience, where you're asking for the assistance of greater souls and the reality itself, so that as you pray and pray and pray, what you're doing in prayer is creating a relationship, a conscious, embodied relationship with the divine, so that bit by bit there's this communication occurs between you and the sacred. See? And then you learn to rely more and more on the sacred, and you learn to have a sense of self-surrender before the sacred. Because in the beginning, you're like a peacock sticking your chest out. I am this, I am that, I am accomplished, blah, blah, blah. And we're ignorantly saying that before God, your creator. What's I before that? This is not even a little period. Maybe it's at best a question mark, this I. But in prayer, you're creating a divine conversation. See? In the beginning, because of our thinking process, we think, well, I'm praying, maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. But, some guys say it's so I'm going to give it a shot. We're very ignorant in the beginning with prayer. But later on, prayer becomes a dynamic, living conversation. It literally becomes, just like this fellow here sitting here, he and I chatting together. There's no confusion whether we're talking, whether we're having a conversation. Over time, prayer becomes like that, where there's no confusion whether there's somebody on the other end of the dialogue. It becomes a real, living, visceral process. It's just, the reason this doesn't happen for a whole lot of people is because they're not committed to it. But if you commit yourself to prayer, first based on the validity of the statements of the saints, saying, okay, I trust what they say, so I'm going to do this experiment with prayer. So if you enter it with that type of commitment, like if he and I commit to being friends, we're going to become friends. That just becomes the ground we stand on, because we make that commitment. Like you commit to marriage, or you commit to anything. It becomes the ground you stand on. So you shouldn't enter prayer with a big maybe. You should make it a commitment, a commitment to a relationship. And then pray. And then all kinds of miracles happen. If you commit to that, heaven shows up. It's just if your commitment is very weak, like, I'll catch you later, I'll see you some other time, maybe you're there, maybe you're not much of a relationship. Not much of a relationship. There's no commitment. But if you commit to it, everything happens. Every kind of event happens. And I guarantee you, heaven wants to validate itself in your consciousness. Heaven wants you to know it's real. Most of the time, it's a pleasant myth that we walk around with. But heaven's not happy with that situation. That's on us. The reality is 1,000,000,000% committed to us. But our level of commitment to it, very weak, very marginal, But when we make that commitment to prayer, that times 10, that times 100 comes our way. And then that relationship becomes a really constant psychic explosions happen, where you're opened. Heaven definitely responds. The weak link is us, our lack of commitment. But just go at it. Pray. And ask for validation. It's okay. Ask for validation. And the validation will show up. If you think that miracles can't happen in your life, you are in error. You are in big error. Real, wild, unimagined miracles can happen in everybody in this room's life. You just have to be committed to the dialogue, committed to the process. Then heaven shows up. That certainly has been the experience of my life. Certainly the experience of my life. So, are there angels? Are there different realms? We read, our sacred scriptures, and we read about devatas and devas and angels, and we think, oh, that's really nice. That's really comforting. But in the back of my mind, we're thinking, I don't know. We're not convinced. It's like I'd like to believe it, but I never seen one. It's not from the lack of commitment of the other side. It's our lack of commitment. It's our lack of commitment. Angels are real. Gods and goddesses are real. Saints and masters are real. They really, really are real. All these are embodiments of the creation. And if you intelligently take that process of prayer, mantra, meditation, it will become validated in your life. The whole science of yoga, the entire science, is based on creating processes in which reality is validated in your life. So 10,000 people can say it doesn't exist. 100% it is so. 100,000 people can say angels don't exist, but you've met one. They've manifested in front of you in your life, had a dialogue with you, and then in the glory of God disappeared. No one can tell you it didn't happen because it happened to you. So these divine events, the analogy I use with all of these divine events, which can become very common to you with the proper practice, is if an elephant steps on your foot, is there a concept of maybe? If an elephant steps on your foot, there's no maybe whether it stepped on your foot or not. So 10,000 people can say the elephant didn't step on your foot. If the elephant stepped on your foot. It was that big an event. It happened to you personally. There's no maybe whether it stepped on your foot or not. Although 10,000 people didn't see it, but you were there, And that's what this whole sanctified experience is like. As you go through these various revelations, as you go through, mysticism is part of your evolution. It's part of your evolutionary experience. It shouldn't be the other. It's part of you. You just haven't opened those doors yet. You haven't done the processes that creates those openings. See? Just like in the beginning, at the beginning of art school, you dabble around with pencils and paper, and then you go to art school. And all of a sudden, 4 years later, you graduate with all kinds of facilities, all kinds of skills, all kinds of experiences. You simply went to school, and you brought what was in you out. There's no difference with sanctity. There's no difference at all. Yoga is a type of school that brings out what is already there. It's in you. You know, you were created from the kingdom. It's in you. It's in you. But you have blocked it off based on your own ignorance, your own lack of perception. All the schools of yoga are designed to bring greater and greater, deeper and deeper perception. That's it. That's it. You have greater and greater, deeper and deeper perception. You have a greater insight into what's real, as opposed to all the temporal realities that you put your energy into. So you're finding what is stable, what is real, what is persistent, as opposed to all the infinite fluctualities of thoughts and feelings and sensations, which are all corruptible. Yoga is saying what's not corruptible. You know, the kingdom of God is not corruptible. His saints and sages and masters are not corruptible. All the various divinities are not corruptible. You know, they're all denizens of the kingdom. And now, as we're just sort of a human evolutionary arc moving towards the kingdom, moving towards self-awareness, moving towards a revelation. That's what's possible. Everything is open to you. You know, if you do the training. And heaven won't force you. You know, it's up to you. It's up to you, the direction God gave you free will. So the direction that you proceed is entirely on you. See? The world is the world, not based on what God is doing. He created this for our experimentation, to see what we would do, to see what we would focus on. That's why Jesus said, "Let thy eye be single." You know, he meant it. Let thy eye be single. I mean, focus on God and God alone. What are we focusing on? We have 10,000 billion things that we're focusing on that have just the stuff of man, which means the stuff of, you know, coming and going, coming and going, coming and going. Volatility. Everything we're focusing on is volatile. Our favorite car, our favorite girlfriend, even our body is volatile. It's coming and going. And how much are we focusing on it? You know, as opposed to saying, okay, all the saints, all the sages of all the traditions have said we have a soul, and that is infinite, it's immortal, it's pure, it's sanctified. Well, how much are we focusing on that? As opposed to our beauty and our cars and our houses and our careers and, you know, our drama, all our personal dramas. Think of how much we're focusing on our dramas, as opposed to saying, the saints, the sages declare there is a soul, there is an infinite reality, there is an infinite beneficence. How much are we focusing on that? Not much. Not much. So it's a question of your choice, what you choose to do with your life. You know, can you have the girlfriend, boyfriend? Can you have the career? Yeah, no problem. That's sort of the stuff of life. But you have to realize it's just the stuff of life. It's not the stuff of reality. It's just the ups and downs of life. But hidden within that, that's why I said there's like a golden thread. So there's a time of day where you stop. And all the creation, all the stuff of life is put aside. You don't have to extinguish it. Just put it into suspension. All your personal dramas, all your aspirations in the world, just put it aside. And learn to sit with the kingdom. See? Change the channel just for a moment. And try to be silent. And say, okay, God, I know what I've been doing. I know what I've been creating. What are you doing? And then quietly clear the mind of your stuff. And be present. As you can be still, you will slowly make a dimensional shift, as opposed to seeing what you think and what you feel. You'll slowly make this shift of the revelation of God's creation in its primal, in its pure expression. See, not in its interpretive expression, in its pure uninterpreted expression. Just pure experience, not as we do it, interpretation. See? If you can quiet yourself and be still and be present, it's a little bit like entering a furnace. Not comfortable in the beginning because we're attached to all of our stuff, all of our dreams, all of our dramas, all of our perceptions. We're attached to it. So that process of letting go is a little bit like a fire because consciously or unconsciously we're holding on to it. You know, we're hugging it. So it's a little bit uncomfortable to let go. And it's a little bit like an experience of dying because everything you held, you're releasing now. So it's like dying. So it's not that comfortable. But in that sort of conscious, you're dying to the seed of creation. You're dying from your creation, see, to the creation. So dying and birth can be synonymous. You're dying to one condition and being birthed to another condition. See? So you're in a crucible. So that crucible can be a little bit uncomfortable. You know, you're dying from the known, the common known, to the unknown. See? You're in a transit. That's what's happening in meditation. So there's a certain amount of psychic discomfort, but there's a certain amount of a joyful revelation also. Because once you can let go of enough stuff, bit by bit you start to see what heaven is doing in its raw, natural, creative expression. And that is a joyous, mind-blowing, expansive, unimaginable circumstance. You're making a massive dimensional shift. But that shift is into sanctity, native sanctity, a condition of native sanctity, not interpretive life, but native sanctity. And that is a massive, massive, massive revelation. It's doable for everybody. It's just a question of when you want to make the commitment. Make that commitment to a surrender to the divine, a surrender to silence, and profound perceptual awareness, just to hold your mind and keep your psyche open to see what is. To see what is. Not your creation, the creation. So that's the transit every human being can make. When you make it, entirely up to you. It's like when you say, enough already. You know? I've been up, I've been down, you're like a ball bouncing all the time. And you're saying, you know, I'm tired. Enough already. You come to a point where you say, there's got to be more. There's got to be more. So you know that you've had this infinite psychic chatter. Why don't you quiet down? Why don't you turn off the chatter? Just for a while, just for a real experiment to see what's there when your mind's not chattering. You haven't done that experiment yet. See? When you say, what's there when my mind is not chattering? Then you start to make that transit. Then you start to enter into the ground of revelation. See? So, ultimately, it's up to you. You know. And you also have to, the beauty of spending time with saints and masters, which you can do with proper aspiration. If you have the aspiration, I want there to be saints in my life. I want there to be high yogis in my life. I want to meet masters. You have to start with that aspiration because that will guide you. That will sort of, if you're in a boat, it'll take the rudder to go in that direction. You know, but most of us don't want that. We want our parties and we want our friends and we want our family. That's no problem. There's nothing the matter with that. But the saints, the sages and masters are of a different culture. See? It's another culture. So you have to say, I want to know that culture. I want to be present in that culture. See? And that culture is not the culture of man. It's a whole different ball game, a whole different life, a whole different orientation. But you have to make that willful decision that I don't know what the culture of saints are, but I want to see it for myself. If you start with just that honest statement, I heard about them, but I don't know really what they are, but I want to know personally. I want to know myself what they are. that culture of sanctity amongst the saints and masters, that alone is your ticket in. If you have that, then you can start to make the transit. But if you think, oh, my family and my friends and my this and my that, that's your priority, well, that's where you're going to be. You're gonna go there. Your existence will follow your heart. See? But if your heart says, okay, all the saints have said they're these masters and they're saints and that there is a kingdom, you have to have the conviction to say, I want to know that culture. I want to know that culture. That should be your persistent prayer. You know, from my boyhood, I've always said, I want to know for myself. I don't want to hear about it. It's like, I want to know for myself. You know, if there's truth, if there's a God, I want to know for myself. That's been my fundamental conviction. I want to know. I don't care what anyone says. I'm very happy with the books, but that's not enough. I want to know for myself. From boyhood, that's been my conviction.
And Hari has, from personal experience, he's been in the yoga. They said it's a frying pan, a fire. He was in the frying pan and the fire. He's there. And also to tell you a little bit about Gurji, the saint, the master.
Yeah.
He in his previous life he was Tukaram.
Oh, you're saying a
If
lot
you know
of secret
anything
knowledge.
about the history of the saints, Tukaram, as I asked Gurji, I says, how many people we know Jesus the Christ, we know, took his body with him. They couldn't find his body around. I says, Gurji, how many people have taken their body with them? He says, okay, there's Jesus the Christ, we know that.
Yeah.
Could find it. Tukaram
Yeah.
was one of the people that took his body with him. And
Yeah.
I think it was one of the Pandu brothers
Yeah.
that was there. Plus, in addition, in Gurji's previous life, he was Uttava. There's an Uttava Gita. You gave me a copy of the book.
He's telling you a lot of special stuff. You're hearing a lot of special things.
Yeah, and,
My master was
and,
unimaginably great.
and Uttava was a direct disciple of Lord Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's like, the literature that Gurji's involved is like 5,000 years.
Yeah.
One bit back to Vyasa, the wrote the Vedas.
It's a short lineage to get all the way back there.
Pardon?
No. There's
It's like-
many births in between.
So
It's not.
So-
He's giving you highlights.
yeah, so Haricharan has had that grace of being in a direct, in the fire pan, so to speak.
Well, you too.
No, I wasn't that brave. I was always around the fire, but in the fire. He was in the fire.
Yeah, you know, everybody has their karmas. You know, I was lucky that I've been with my master a very, very long time. But I'm like everybody else. You know, I am a working yogi. That's what I am. You know, I want to get through the day. I want to do God and Guru's will. That's it. You know, my master is like stellarly great. You know, stellarly. I'm just a stone. You know, it's very hard to stick your chest out and say how special I am when you've actually seen the glory of God. When you've seen that, it's very hard to stick out your chest and think you're special. You know, I've seen those kinds of realities. You know, mega, dimensionally unimaginable. You know, sanctity. So, you know, I'm happy to be able to serve my God, my Guru. That's it. Call it a day. You know, do the work and go. I'm very content with that. You know, but, you know, I can testify as just a human being to say with personal knowledge, saints are real, masters are real, angels are real, heaven is real, the different lokas are real. These things I know because I've seen these things with my own eyes. Not just through scripture, but through my own experience. But based on that, I don't, that might sound very special, but I don't think it's very special because I think everybody can do it. You know, I think my only significance has been I've been ruthlessly persistent. You grab the master's feet and you just simply refuse to let go. You know, that's it. You know, you refuse to let go. And you acquire the ability to be ruthlessly honest with yourself. You have to say, I want to know truth, come what may. I want to know truth, come what may. So there's a type of stripping that you have to go through. You do have to live in a type of fire where we have all these fantasies. We want to think I'm so good, I'm so this, I'm so... Just get over that. Just say, oh, human psyche is full of mischief, and buried in that pool of mischief is the seed of sanctity. I want to find that seed of sanctity and hold on to that. And all the other stuff, just let it go. So that you learn to find that sanctity, and it's like a bellows just churning that fire, so that fire grows and burns up everything else, all the nonsense. You sort of become what you're fixated on. So the yogic process is to start to find the sanctity in yourself and fixate on that, so that everything else gets burnt up. See? As we're with regular people, they find some problem. I have a pimple on my nose, and they fixate on that. They fixate on all the nonsense, as opposed to fixating on what's most important about their beingness, what's most important. So that's the difference between a regular person and a yogi, is what you're fixating on. One is fixating on the common, the other is fixating on the sacred. So one's becoming more common, the other's becoming more sacred. It really is that. It's what you fixate on. But the thing is, the yoga science teaches you how to put your attention on real and stable, essential sanctities within yourself. Not imagined things. Oh, I'm such a nice guy, imagining that. No. This is the real physics of God, where you start to come to a place where the dynamics, the physics of God are functioning, the various cauldrons within yourself, and learning how to be present within that, and then working from that. I'm not working from my thoughts. I'm not working from my feelings. You start to learn to work from the physics of God within you, without all of your own stuff, without your own creations. See? So like my feeling is the personality and what Haricharan has to say is not important. It's not important at all. But when I deeply concentrate on the divine physics and then speak from that, that's important. That's what's important. Because that's reflective of the mind, that divine mind, not my common mind. See? So we all have that in us. We all have that facility in us to touch the sacred within us and to function from that, regardless of all the other. This is this body, and this is his feelings, and this is his thoughts. Those are all temporal, corruptural. But to be able to take the psyche and take the heart and then fix it on the divine realities and have the heart live from that place and have the mind speak from that place, that's special. That's significant. See, and when you acquire a certain amount of skill by the grace of the masters and such, to be able to hold on to those divine realities and to speak from those divine realities, that's a teacher. A real Dharma teacher. They're not speaking from themselves. They're speaking from the hidden kingdom in them. See, which is linked to that big divine program. And that's what we want for everybody. And that we know is everyone is capable of it. It's not Hari is special. That's not true. Hari is just further along and learned how to grab onto those things and then speak from that. That's it. It's not that everybody in the room doesn't have that capacity. You certainly do. You don't have the training, but you certainly have the capacity. See?
I was hoping that you would teach us how to meditate the way you meditate.
Good luck.
But I also see that it's you don't have a particular good luck.
No, you can't do that. That's like a long not in one day.
Okay.
Meditation is a long, difficult study. Not possible. Can I help you in it if you're sincere? Certainly I can. That's my job.
Yeah, like a guided meditation just to show
Oh,
whatever.
oh,
you're-
not now. The time is too short.
Yeah,
The
that's
time
all.
is too short.
It's noon.
But can all that stuff be done? Do I do that stuff all the time? Absolutely. You know, the only criteria is a sincere heart. If you have that, I'm interested. If you don't have that, let's have tea and call it a day. you know, basically, what I want is the best things in my life. I want that to happen for you too. That's it. The very best things, the wonderful opportunities, the wonderful insights, the wonderful experiences, the wonderful journeys. That's what I want for you. It's there in you. It's just no one showed you how. That's it. No one showed you how to pray, how to practice mantra, how to meditate, so that it becomes your divine story. See, that's what I want. It becomes your divine story, that no one can say it didn't happen. You know for sure. So that's what the Dharma teachers are here for. That's why I'm here, is so that you have your own authentic journey, not your own imagined journey, your own authentic journey with God, with divinity, so that you can learn the culture of the saints. See, to make this transit, that's what you have to learn. You have to learn, the culture of man. You've been getting by all these years, but you have to learn the culture of the saints. See, so that you can participate in that divine drama. See, that divine life. So it's bit by bit. Those who want that, show up. Ask questions. Learn. This is a gift not from me. This is a gift from the kingdom. It's not from me. Heaven. We all at some time in our evolutionary existence will become Dharma teachers, meaning heaven has given us such a treasury that we just start to share the treasury. See, we've been given more than we could ever spend. So we just say, I want you to have that same joy. I want you to have that same insight. I want you to have that same opportunity. That's it. That's it. That you all deserve it. You're all children of God. You're all going to come to this at some time. But this is a present opportunity. That's what's happening. Okay, so we'll chant Om. we were supposed to do that a long time ago. But this is an organic process. You got to go with the flow. So that when you're chanting Om, another thing that you're saying, you're making a declaration that all this is God. That's the declaration that you're making. That's the affirmation that you're working. That all of this, it's God. In its seed form, it's God. See? So the spine is erect. You'll take a deep breath in. Take a moment of silence. Take a deep breath. And release the breath. And then gently open your eyes. I think, one and all, I see lots of new people have come. I'm very delighted. And to tell you the truth, the only way you got here is by a prayer. You had to say a prayer at some time to be here. So that you said a prayer, heaven gives you the opportunity. And then it's really up to you what you do with the opportunity. That's completely on you. Heaven delivered. You have to take the next step as to what you're going to do. What level of association you want. It's all your business. What you choose. But you have an opportunity. I am a Dharma teacher. Am I the only Dharma? No. You have to go to what's your comfortable fit. Me, I'm a very direct type of guy. It's like either do the work or go have a latte. It's up to you. It's up to you. You have to make your decisions. But on another note, this whole idea of I am my thoughts, I am my feeling, I am my body. All I want to say is that's part of you. That's not all of you. In the common, ignorant human life, that's all of you. In the yoga life, that's just part of you. And people like me are just trying to get you to have the opportunity to see what else is you. All the other stuff is okay, but what else is there? See? That's what we become specialists in. What else is there? See? And that moves you from the realm of all the human stuff. What about your whole divine heritage? That's what we're here to teach you. What your divine heritage. You know your human heritage. You know that part. I don't have to show you any of that. But your divine heritage, you don't know. And that's my specialty, as per the will of my master, to help you with. So that's what's going on here. So the ladies and fellows have made some food. And, your job is to ask 10,000 questions. My job is to answer 10,000 questions. That's how it works, Till a point where you start to have your own direct personal experiences with the divine. That's where we want to get you to, so that you know for sure in your own belly, in your own existence, God is so, and that you build a living relationship with that divinity. It's not just like a maybe other. It's, if you had a wonderful divine mother that gave you this completely loving embrace, it's so. That's what we want you to know about God, that there is this embrace that's completely loving, that's completely visceral, and it is so. See? You have to get to that place. Then you'll never turn back. You'll go through all the human stuff, but you know that you have this, eternal divine relationship. Your boat can't be rocked anymore. Stuff happens, but God is so. And that is an absolute sanctuary